The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Yeah, we got some sports news to talk about today. Ron Rivera, who usually holds his news conferences on Wednesdays in the afternoon, is going to hold his today at 10:45, where he is expected to announce that Jacoby Brissett will be the starting quarterback going into the San Francisco game this week. I can't imagine it would be anything else because it would be business as usual. If Sam Howell were going to start, he wouldn't have to say anything before practice, but he's elected to talk before practice today, which would indicate to me that Brissett is going to start. That's not a shock. He's been excellent coming off the bench the last 2 weeks, and Howell is regressing. What looked like a certainty that he would start next season at number one is now looking very shaky. And as they sit in the number 3 spot right now for the draft, you got to figure that there's great interest in drafting a quarterback. Not, of course, by this regime, because Ron Rivera and his staff is going to be fired a week from Monday after they play their final game. We still don't know whether it's going to be against or whether it's going to be on the 6th, which is a Saturday, or the 7th, which is a Sunday. Depends on what it means to Dallas. I would imagine they'll play it Sunday, but we'll see. We'll see about that, and we'll get to that. There's some NBA news to talk about. Pistons set the record last night. I want to spend some time on that, and later in the show, and I've been having fun doing this last few days, there have been some Joe Buck interviews that have surfaced on YouTube, done 5-6 years ago, long interviews, and some really interesting stories told. And I watched the Kurt Warner one yesterday, and I pulled some incredible stories out of there, including one where he could have possibly wound up with the Chicago Bears, who have been walking in the quarterback desert pretty much since Sid Luckman. Jim McMahon led them to the Super Bowl championship in 1986, but that was a defensive team. McMahon was okay. The defense was awesome, was freaking awesome, and that's why they won that Super Bowl. But it would have been something if Kurt Warner would have wound up in Chicago with the right circumstances and how history might be so different. And I will talk about all of that, but something happened yesterday which I want to make you aware of. You probably won't know the name Tom Foti. Tom Foti passed away at the age of 77. I'm sure at some point you heard him on the radio, probably doing a CBS newscast or reporting on a story for CBS. He was a radio lifer, and I am a radio lifer. I am finishing up my 46th year in radio. I've done a little bit of television, and I have done a little bit of radio news, but I've been mostly in sports ever since 1978 and helped to launch the first sports radio station in New York and the first one here, and pretty much kept my hand in it all these years. And I work on holidays for a variety of reasons, particularly on Christmas because I'm Jewish, but also something I learned from Tom Foti, who started his career in radio in the late 1960s in New York, worked for a variety of different places, last 25 years at CBS News, spent some time at WTOP, and when I worked with him, he was at UPI. And UPI at one time was a major wire service, which also had a radio network. And he was the pro's pro of radio. I mean, this is a guy who truly dedicated his life to his craft. I don't think he ever married, and always made himself available whenever needed for whatever was needed. Sometimes he'd even fix the equipment. You know, he was a jack of all trades, could do a newscast, could do a report, could edit, copy, could do anything and everything in radio and radio news, and I imagine at some point did some print work as well. He loved the news business, and his story is remarkable. He's born in Budapest, Hungary, and as a child was trapped in an underground bomb shelter for several days after Soviet tanks crushed the 1956 Hungarian Revolution. And when they came out, he and his family, they discovered that their house had been leveled. So they were homeless for a little while. They escaped to Austria, and he was among the refugee children greeted by then Vice President Richard Nixon. They came to the U.S. It's ironic that he died just a day after Christmas, because they had arrived in the United States Christmas Day, 1956, at the Camp Kilmer refugee camp in New Jersey, and he was raised in New York and went to CCNY, and then immediately got into the news business, working for WINS and the New York Daily News, the Associated Press. I mean, he was at a variety of places. And I say this to you, not necessarily because you'll know Tom Foti, but I think it's important to recognize the work of people who put in a lifetime of work in this kind of thing, and you take for granted what they do, but it takes dedicated people to do this and to do it as well as Tom did it for all these years, more than 50 years in the radio business, and still doing it with enthusiasm in his late 70s. And you know, ironically, this is the week you would hear the most of Tom Foti. And how they found out that he had passed away, he didn't come to work yesterday for CBS and didn't call anybody. And I'm sure that's the first time that happened. He may have missed days for illness or whatever, but he certainly would have let people know because he was as professional as they came. And CBS went to his home and found that he had passed away. And you know, those of us who've been in the news business, cross paths with him, cross paths with other people who work with him, they all say the same thing about him, that he was incredibly dedicated to what he did and lived his life for his work. He was just one of those people. And you see them from time to time. I like to think of myself in some ways as that, but, you know, I have a lot of balance in my life, too. I'm married. I have 2 grown kids and a granddaughter, so I've had a different kind of life experience than Tom had, and certainly a different life experience growing up in Chevy Chase than having to flee Budapest, Hungary as a child and coming to the United States. But it is really touching to see all the tributes from people in the business who knew him and worked with him. And he did work with a lot of people. That's fairly typical of radio. People change jobs a lot, and you wind up intersecting with the same people, sometimes in 2 and 3 different places. But I really admired Tom Foti, as all did who work with him, and just, you know, wanted to make you aware of while these wheels turn, especially at this time of year, you know, when a lot of people are on vacation, it's people like Tom Foti who kept it running, and especially in the news business, you have to be there. You never know when something big is going to happen. It could happen on Christmas Eve. It could happen on New Year's Day. No, it doesn't matter. It could happen at any time, and he was there to capably cover the news and do it as well as just about anybody. So rest in peace, Tom Foti. All right, on to the basketball. And, oh, man, the Detroit Pistons set a record last night by losing their 27th straight game. They lost at home to the Brooklyn Nets 118-112. That's the most consecutive losses in a single season. The overall record is 28 straight. That was accomplished by the 76ers over the course of the 2014-15 and 2015-16 seasons. Detroit has not won a game since its home opener October 28th against Chicago and is now 2-28 on the season. So they won on the road, they won at home, and haven't won since. I was looking at the schedule. The schedule, to me, there doesn't really look like a winnable game for a while. They play at Boston tomorrow. Boston is 23-6. They're home against Toronto on the 30th. Maybe. Toronto's 11-18. Houston has been a bad team. They're not bad this year. They're over 500, 15-13. It's New Year's Day, and it's at Houston. It's on the road. Then they go to Utah. Utah's slightly under 500, but, again, a road game. Golden State isn't what Golden State was, but it's the 5th. Draymond Green could be back for that game. And even though they're a 500 team, you still have Steph Curry there, and he can keep a team in a game by himself. And then they play at defending champion Denver. Good luck with that on the 7th. On the 9th, they're home against Sacramento. I think their next realistic chance to win is on the 10th of January when they would play San Antonio, and San Antonio is 4-25. That could be a game where they go into it with a 34-game losing streak. They could obliterate the record. It's just remarkable how bad they are, and although last night wasn't an embarrassing loss to lose by 6 points to the Brooklyn Nets. It's still their 27th consecutive loss this season. Monty Williams is the head coach of the Pistons, the very well-compensated Monty Williams.
You have to be real about where we are. Nobody wants something like this attached to them. The bottom line is it's my job. It's my responsibility. When you look at the record, coaches are graded on their records. That's the bottom line.
Well, the bottom line on the contract is this. Monty Williams was hired last summer by the Pistons, and he became the highest-paid coach in the NBA, signing a 6-year, $78.5 million deal. That's $13 million a year, and it contained clauses which could kick it up to $100 million over 8 years. And here's a guy who's just been fired by the Phoenix Suns. They have had high draft picks because they've been a bad team, and they took number 1 overall in 2021, 2 years ago, Cade Cunningham. And he had a big game last night. You can't ask much more of Cade Cunningham, 41 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, and he had 37 in the second half alone. But they still lost. And Cade Cunningham sounds like he's still with the program, but the program be sinking. The ship be sinking, as Michael Ray Richardson once said. Here's Cade Cunningham.
A lot of my positivity comes from just the joy of the game. I love what I do. I'm blessed to be healthy and play, so that's where it comes from. But there's nothing positive about this situation right now that we put ourselves in. So that's where we got to dig deep and get ourselves out of it.
Dig deep. Yeah, I'm reminded of of the Washington Redskins in 1998, where they dug deep into an 0-7 hole, and they had a wide receiver who week after week we hit rock bottom. We hit rock bottom. And no, they hadn't hit rock bottom. They kept going. So even with 27 losses, I'm not sure the Pistons have hit rock bottom. And again, as I go through the schedule here, with games upcoming against teams like Boston, Golden State, Denver, Sacramento's good this year, maybe San Antonio, where they're playing Victor Wembanyama, who's developing and proving to be worthy of being number one, but the team's terrible. 4-25, and the Detroit Pistons are now 2-28. Wow, that is really something. My goodness. More NBA. Tim Legler on yesterday on our morning show, Undisputed, and he covered a couple of interesting stories around the league. One of them involving the Golden State Warriors and their very successful coach Steve Kerr, who did a lot of whining the other night as the Denver Nuggets beat the Warriors and beat them badly. Or no, it was a close game, 120-114. But Nikola Jokic, who had a bad shooting night, he was 4 of 12, still finished with 26 points, going 18 of 18 from the free throw line. And Kerr said after the game, "I have no problem with the officials themselves. I have a problem with the way we are legislating defense out of the game. That's what we're doing. The way we're teaching officials, we're just enabling the players to fool them on their way to the line. If I was a fan, I wouldn't have wanted to watch the second half of that game. It was disgusting. It was just baiting refs into calls, but the refs have to make those calls because that's how they're taught." And he said over the years, players have become smart. Over the last decade, they've gotten smarter and smarter. We've enabled the players, and they're taking full advantage, and it's a parade to the free throw line. It's disgusting to watch. Analysis from Tim Legler on ESPN, and he watched that game and listened to what Steve Kerr said. This is what he told our morning show yesterday.
Obviously he's frustrated, right? They lose a game by 6. They're in a game 6 minutes ago. It's anybody's game. And Nikola Jokic does not play well offensively, gets 4 field goals. Able to have that kind of an impact because of all the calls he got in the second half. And I think that's where the frustration comes out, because you go back and look at every one of those calls, there are definitely some that could have gone either way, right? These were light contact type of calls. Jokic's really good at selling the call and getting to the line on a night when he's not feeling it offensively. So I think what Steve Kerr was articulating is we played Jokic as well as we can. Right? Everything we could to make him have a subpar night offensively. We did, but at the end, he still gets to 26 points because he gets to the line 18 times. And that's where the frustration comes out on the part of Steve, because he felt like they played a good enough game to win, and all of this contact that Jokic is doing all the time, and it's officiating, getting rid for that time after time, frustrating. But I think I can agree with him maybe on some of these calls in this particular game. I mean, this is nothing new around the league. I mean, this is kind of how the league is set up now. Some of the contact that used to be allowed on star players has been taken away. There's a lot more freedom of movement. So this is every night in the NBA. This isn't just last night or Steve Kerr or the Warriors got somehow the short end of the stick. I think this is basically the way the game is officiated now for star players. And so that, just unfortunately for Steve Kerr, he doesn't have a guy that plays with that kind of physicality and forces that kind of contact trip after trip to get to the line 16, 18 times. And so I think that's where the frustration set in for Steve Kerr. And I guess if I'm just looking at one game as a sample, I would agree with Kerr on the officiating in last night's game in particular.
All right, and then we got another NBA issue for Legler to tackle, and this is a report from Adrian Wojnarowski that Kevin Durant is unhappy with his supporting cast. Well, boo-hoo. You got Devin Booker, and you picked up Bradley Beal. Problem is, Bradley Beal doesn't play. Yeah, we knew that here. He didn't play, so they took him and his contract, and now you got your big three, but you need another 7 or 8 guys around you, and the 7 or 8 guys around him aren't performing very well, as we saw the other night when Luka Doncic and the Mavericks torched his team with 50 points and a big loss for Phoenix. So Legler watched this game, and this was his observation of what he saw from the apparently unhappy Kevin Durant.
I've never watched Kevin Durant exhibit more defeatist body language, and it was early in the game. I mean, they fell behind by double digits early, and his body language and demeanor was just something I'm not used to seeing Kevin Durant. Remember, this was a guy that basically took on the Milwaukee Bucks by himself in a 7-game series a couple years ago in Brooklyn, and because he has that much belief in himself and his ability. And last night, I just saw a guy that looked so frustrated that it was overt. He was wearing his emotions on his sleeve, and I've just never seen Kevin Durant really look like that on a basketball court. So that stood out to me of everything. And Luka had a 50-point game, right? And Dallas scores 128. And the number one thing that I'm writing down as I'm watching the game is, man, what is up with Durant? Like, you could just see it. He was wearing it. And that's partly because, of their record. This is a team that's sub 500. We're past the third of the way through the season, and they are sub 500 in a loaded Western Conference. And I think Kevin Durant, he went there and he tried to create another situation for himself that was going to give him a path to a championship. And he's looking around at the rest of these teams in the Western Conference saying, where do we even stack up? Now, Bradley Beal hasn't been there. They haven't played together. I get that. Maybe that'll be the ointment that he needs. When Beal starts to play, he'll have more belief in this team. I don't necessarily think the supporting cast is as weak as that statement would indicate. I mean, you got 55 points last night out of Grayson Allen and Metu. I mean, I think they made Eric Gordon's a nice addition, right? Eubanks, they made nice additions to round out their stars. They just have to figure out a way to play with a style and flow offensively that's harder to guard. And that's not what I'm seeing out of them right now. So it's not great right now what's happening in Phoenix. You're not going to be able to pass judgment until you get Beal back for an extended period of time. But I did not like what I saw to Kevin Durant last night, just in terms of his leadership, his demeanor, his body language. And when you have your best player looking like that and it's so external, his emotions and the way he feels about the moment, that's a bad sign for the state of the Suns right now. So I think this is definitely something to keep an eye on and something to be watchful for. But, again, we can't make final judgment until we see Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant all play together for an extended period of time.
Yeah, but that's going to be a problem, Legs, because we watched what happened here. Bradley Beal doesn't play. He plays some. You can't count on him long term, and that's going to be their really Achilles heel. And the way things work in the NBA now, Kevin Durant's having a good year. He's 35 years old. If he's unhappy at the trade deadline and wants to go someplace else, he can go. That's the way it works. You decide you don't want to be someplace. You decide you want to leave, And if you're good enough, you decide where you want to go, and that's where they send you. So, Kevin Durant finishing the season in Phoenix, we'll see. We'll see about that. But Bradley Beal coming in to complete the big three with Booker, yeah, good luck with that. Coming up, Ron Rivera due to announce today, I believe, a quarterback change, Jacoby Brissett. If you missed this, we played this on Christmas Day. It was after the loss to the Jets. Jacoby Brissett, very eloquent and very supportive of Sam Howell. I want to play those comments again for you coming up next, and we'll talk more about the quarterback situation for the Commanders as they head into Sunday's game against San Francisco. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Got Tony coming up at 11 o'clock today. In the next hour, I want to play some of an interview that Kurt Warner did with Joe Buck and the backstory of how he got to the Rams. It was made into a movie a couple of years ago, but some of this was not told in the movie. And the incredible story of how he wound up with the Rams instead of the Bears. Wait till you hear that. That's coming up next hour. 10:45 today, so about an hour, 20 minutes from now, Ron Rivera is going to hold his news conference. It's expected that he will be going to Jacoby Brissett as his starting quarterback against the 49ers. He's come off the bench the last couple of weeks to replace the ineffective Sam Howell. And Howell on Sunday threw 2 interceptions, 6 of 12, 56 yards. He had a quarterback rating of 1.7, nearing the Blutarski-like 0.0. It's almost hard to do, but he did in that loss to the Jets. And so Brissett has played much better when he's come off the bench. And I think, obviously, if you're a fan of the team, you want them to lose to the 49ers and the Cowboys so you can hang on to that number 3 pick. But Ron Rivera's got a responsibility to the other 52 guys in the locker room. And if he's telling them, hey, we're trying to win the game, go out and do the best you can to win the game, you got to give those guys the best chance to win. And right now it's Jacoby Brissett. But if you were going to have a guy as your backup quarterback after having listened to his news conference on Sunday after the game, I come away with the feeling that this is the ultimate backup guy. He was paid $8 million this year. And you look at some of the contending teams who are trying to get in there like Minnesota, he would have been worth maybe twice that as a backup because not only has he performed when asked to perform this year for a team that's not very good, but his way of handling the starter. And you heard Howell throughout the season talk about how much support he's gotten from Jacoby Brissett, and you can really understand it when you listen to Brissett from the news conference. I'm going to play 3 what we call sound bites from what he said on Sunday in New York. And this is on being able to come off the bench, as he has the last 2 weeks, and lead touchdown drives. And as he says, it's not quite as easy as it looks.
It'll be easy for me to come up here and say, like, man, I just – it's because I'm a veteran that things like that happen. It's just like how things just work out sometimes, And I literally the same thing I did last week, the same thing I did this week. I'm talking to Sam, man. It's just like some of these things are you don't know or you learn it as you go. And you got to go through it. You got to get through it. And you got to go through it, And for me, it's just going out there and just playing football and how I know how to do best, and trying to put our team in the best position possible, put myself in the best position possible, and letting the results take care of themselves.
Now, this is I think the most important thing that he said, and this illustrates the relationship that he's got with Sam Howell and why Sam has been so complimentary of Brissett. This is what he says. He told Howell after, how it had to be just a devastating day for him. You could chalk up what happened the week before against the Rams as just a bad day on the road, but now you're facing a Jets team which isn't going anywhere this year either. Their defense is good, I'll grant you that, but you'd hope for a comeback performance, and you post a quarterback rating of 1.7. Here's Brissett.
I mean, I told him, man, this is going to be the hardest part of your career right now, and it's going to feel like, man, that you're in this by yourself, and it's snowballing. It's one thing after another. It's one thing after another. But I know from being in this league, man, it's the good ones find a way to get to the other side. No matter how long it takes, how hard it is. You surround yourself with good people. I hope he leans on me as one of those good people that'll help him get through this, because I know I will. And you just go through it like that, and it's no I mean, what all the coaches say, it's no magic pill. It's no magic thing for somebody to go over there and say, Sam, do this, and everything works. It's man, you gotta go through it, and you just gotta make sure that you got the right people in your ear. You keep your confidence. You stay true to who you are, because that's what's gotten you to this far. And I'm excited for him, man. I told him that, like, literally, I got run off the field. I'm excited for this part of your career, because not a lot of people get this experience, man. And the ones that come on the other side, man, they have a better story than a lot of people. And I'm sure he'll appreciate this part of his journey at the end of his career.
Now this is what he says, how Howell reacted to. I mean, that's a great thing to say there. Like, hey, it looks bad now, but the good ones come out of this, and I'm excited for your opportunity, what you have here. I mean, Jacoby Brissett is not over the hill. He's 31 years old. He may find himself in a situation, maybe not coming in as a starting quarterback, but on a team that looks to contend, and they have a key injury. Like, think about Jacoby Brissett if he'd been on the Cincinnati Bengals this year. Might you even think of them as a factor in the playoffs? I mean, there's all those things. This is how he says Howell handled that kind of advice that he gave him.
He understood it, and like I told somebody, I mean, that's like my little brother, man. It's like I told him before I started. I said, I'm probably the last person you want to hear from right now, but he's obviously processing a lot of stuff right now, and as he should be, that's part of the journey is processing and questioning and looking inside to find answers and looking other places to find answers. So he understood it, and he was receptive of it. I'm probably one of his biggest fans on his team, made right now seem like probably biggest fans in this world, and so at the end of the day, he understands what he has to do. And like I said, I'm excited for him, man, because I know he's not going to do it by himself.
Now, he is supportive of Howell, no question, but the coaching staff is now admitting that Sam Howell is pressing. Eric Bieniemy said that recently. Tavika Pritchard, the quarterback's coach, said that, and Ron Rivera said yesterday. We're going to play some of his sound coming at the 10 o'clock hour. He says, right now you watch him, and he's trying to make the perfect play. I think he's reading a little bit more into some of the things he sees out there. I think he's just got to settle and trust what he's seeing initially and stick with the offense. This is Brissett. Now, this is right after the game, so he's not going to throw him under the bus, but Brissett is indicating, no, he doesn't think that's the case with Howell right now.
Pressing? No. Listen, this position is the hardest position in all the sports, man. It's hard to say somebody's out there pressing or trying to go win a game, and trying to make plays. And that's what every time I watch him play, I'm seeing a kid fight for everything, and like I said, it's easy for somebody to come up here and say, like, oh, he could have did this or he could have did that, or Jacoby went in the game and did this and did that. But, like, what he's had to endure this year and what he's gone through and like these moments right now and he's still standing tall, man, I'm excited for this part of his career, man. I think he's gonna come out on top, and a lot of these questions are gonna be answered by y'all rather than him.
Now, the one thing about Howell, and his demeanor has not really changed that much. Even when things were going well, he kind of looked the same as he did on Sunday, but you could look kind of in his eyes and see that, he's starting to realize, ooh, man, this is not going as well as it was a couple of months ago, and maybe, what looked to be a path to a long career in the NFL as a starter isn't going that way. This was the Howell response on Sunday to being benched for the second straight week and how he's handling it.
I just got to keep controlling what I can control. I'm going to keep taking it one day at a time, and I know it's still early on in my career. I'm still a young player, and I just got to keep doing what I can to just, keep trying to get better, and not let this moment define who I am as a player, who I am as a person, and I won't let it define me.
Well, it seems likely that at least for 1 week he's going to be watching from the bench. Again, Ron Rivera holding his news conference a little over an hour, and expected to announce that we're going to see Jacoby Brissett being the starter when they take the field on Sunday. Meantime, we got this from my buddy Tom Lavero, and it's it's kind of autopsy time on the Ron Rivera era, even though it's got 2 games to go. He will be fired a week from Monday, and when you look back on it, you could say, well, were the reasons early on that led to this? And Lavero says absolutely, positively. He writes, where did it begin? It started as soon as he took the job when he meekly accepted the owner's quarterback as his own. It began with the decision to live with Dwayne Haskins instead of telling the owner, "That's your quarterback, not mine. I'm going to find one because someday, a few years from now, I will tell reporters the truth is this is a quarterback-driven league, and if you look at the teams that have been able to sustain success, they've been able to build around a specific quarterback." And I think this references last year when Carson Wentz was stinking and they were having to turn to Taylor Heineke after Wentz got hurt, and Rivera was asked about the other teams in the division. You know, look, the Giants made the playoffs last year, Cowboys, Eagles went to the Super Bowl. What's the deal here? And he said quarterback. And then he had to kind of moonwalk away from that, meaning that, you got to develop, and we've been, hard to do that. Well, Wentz was not going to be the guy, even though he was claiming at that time that he was somehow going to develop Carson Wentz. Didn't happen. More from Tom Loverro. Doesn't matter what grades Rivera said they had in Carolina on Haskins coming out of Ohio State. There were red flags surrounding him from the night he was drafted in 2019 until his life tragically ended when he was fatally struck by a dump truck trying to cross Interstate 595 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida at 7 a.m. on August 9, 2022. The biggest alarm for Rivera should have been that Haskins was the owner's son's high school buddy who Snyder demanded the front office draft over their objections with the 15th pick in the first round. Rivera should have channeled his inner Marty Schottenheimer and told Snyder to play with his boat while the coach devoted his time to the most important position on the team, quarterback. He had all the leverage over Snyder, having just signed a 5-year deal with the radioactive owner and still being a highly regarded coach, not yet poisoned by the aura of self-destruction that engulfed this franchise under Snyder. Yet Rivera went along with taking the owner's quarterback as his hope to begin his tenure in Washington. If Rivera had made that stand then, instead of wasting time on Haskins, the two top quarterback prospects available with the second pick of the 2020 draft were Tua Tagovailoa and Justin Herbert after Joe Burrow went to Cincinnati with the first selection. Rivera had the opportunity for a dramatic beginning. He had the chance to begin the rebuild with the biggest building block he would need, the quarterback. Several years later, Rivera would tell everyone with the difference maker for winning teams was building around a successful quarterback, but he drafted pass rusher Chase Young with the second pick, and we know how that worked out. Rivera did actually make a quarterback statement a few months after he took over. He traded a 5th-round pick for Kyle Allen, his backup from Carolina, supposedly to create a quarterback competition for Haskins, but Rivera never seemed to understand what the real quarterback competition really was. And so now he's here with a 4-11 record, coming off a loss to the Jets, with 5th-round pick at quarterback, an illusion named Sam Howell, who was benched twice in the last 2 weeks for the quarterback Rivera brought in to create another phony competition, Jacoby Brissett. After 4 years, this was all Rivera had to show for the most important position on the field. If only the Rivera of the past would have spoken with and listened to the Rivera of the future, this team might be in a different place. Like he told reporters in 2022, the truth is this is a quarterback-driven league, and if you look at the teams that have been able to sustain success, they've been able to build it around a specific quarterback. Then again, he probably should have never taken that call from Snyder. Now remember, before Rivera took the job, he said he called Joe Gibbs. Well, Joe Gibbs sold sunshine, and the one coach that Danny didn't mess with was Gibbs. Gibbs saved his bacon for a while. That of all the moves that Snyder made, that was the best one he ever did. When Steve Spurrier resigned from the golf course, and you went, oh my God, who are they going to get? Ray Rhodes, and then he's bringing Joe Gibbs back. Are you kidding me? Wow. And then Gibbs got a lot of money from Snyder. Make no mistake about that. He got a nice salary. More importantly, Snyder dumped a lot of money into the race team. And I do believe that one of the reasons that Joe Gibbs came back was he needed money for the race team, and he got it from Snyder. So he's been very positive in things he said, though he was somewhat invisible toward the end of Snyder's run, and now has quickly, gotten chummy with the new owners and gotten in business with them. But had he called Mike Shanahan, I think things might have been different. And Shanahan fell into the same trap. He let Dan Snyder trade for Donovan McNabb when he really didn't want to do it. And he was in favor of trading up to get RG3, but had the salary cap penalty come down just a couple of days earlier, they wouldn't have been able to do that, and that crippled the franchise too. Now, remember the salary cap penalty, that did come under Shanahan, and they were told by the league, hey, 2010 is going to be an uncapped year, so you can do what you want, and they did. They plowed Albert Hainsworth's ridiculous contract into that. D'Angelo Hall, who also was due a ridiculous amount of money, they plowed that into 2010, figuring they wouldn't get hit. And then, led by John Mara, said, oh, no, we all agreed we wouldn't do this. So they hit Washington with the biggest salary cap penalty of all. I think it was like $30 million or something like that, which really crippling. So that didn't happen. And my feeling was when Mike Shanahan came in 2010, after they got rid of Jim Zorn, that he would be in control, that he would be able to call the shots, and he wasn't as in control as we thought. And it was, later we find out that it's Snyder, undermining him with RG3 and ordering. I don't think he ordered RG3 to play under Shanahan. I think that happened under Jay Gruden the following year. But, Shanahan's final middle figure out the door was to bench RG3. Hey, here's your prized possession. We're going to put him on the bench for the last 3 games of the year. How do you like that, Dan? And then Snyder got rid of him. So, yeah, Rivera made mistakes made by a number of his predecessors, and now the chickens have come home to roost. This is a team that hopefully will finish up 4-13, and a new regime will come in and reap the benefits of high draft picks and salary cap room and things like that. Well, Tony's coming up at 11 o'clock. We've got more of the Andy Poland Show to come. Don't go away. All right, later this hour, we are going to hear from Coach Ron Rivera on his quarterback decision. There'll be the news conference in Ashburn, and I'll have my eye on Twitter. And as soon as he makes this announcement, it's not like the smoke coming out of the papal chimney, but we'll find out. I think we'll find out that it's going to be Jacoby Brissett who's going to start against San Francisco on Sunday. And in terms of wins and losses, probably inconsequential. Brissett gives them a better chance to win, but heck, they're going to be at least double-digit underdogs when they play San Francisco on Sunday. Line is now 13.5. Could move a little bit with Brissett, and also the injuries that San Francisco had in the loss to Baltimore on Monday night, including Brock Purdy, the quarterback, who suffered a stinger and may or may not be available to go. We'll see about that. But San Francisco will win the game, and they need to win the game. And Washington needs to lose the game to hang on to that number 3 spot. But the official announcement coming from Rivera shortly. He was supposed to do it at 2 this afternoon. But, I guess the media is not allowed to watch practice, but they watch the warm-ups, and you get an idea as to who's doing what. And I guess Rivera didn't want a tweet storm of, looks like Brissett. He wants to make it official, and we'll do that coming up at 10:45 this morning. Meantime, yesterday was the day that Rivera talked. Usually it's Monday because Monday was Christmas. They moved it to yesterday, and it was expected that he would make his quarterback announcement then. But like he's done in the past, there's some things I want to look at. I want to talk to Eric Bieniemy about it, and I'm not sure right now. And he was a little bit snippy about some of the questions about Sam Howell, but when asked specifics about what's going on now, why has there been this regression, what are you seeing, he said this.
Right now, you watch him, and he's trying to make the perfect play. I think he's reading a little bit more into some of the things that he sees out there. And I think he's just got to settle in and trust what he's seeing initially and stick with the offense.
Now this is kind of a ridiculous question because Ron Rivera's not going to make this call next year. Everybody's been playing this game of charades, which is what you have to do. But knowing that Ron Rivera is going to be out, it seems ridiculous to ask him about the future of Sam Howell with the Commanders. That future will be decided by somebody else. But, this is all part of the waltz that goes on with media availability. And, nobody's going to say, hey, Ron, whoever replaces you next year, what's going to happen with Sam Howell? You can't ask it like that. So the question was about the long-term future for Howell, which seemed on track for him to be the starting quarterback next year. But the way he's played in particular the last 2 games where he's been benched for throwing ridiculous interceptions against the Rams and last week against the Jets, and his quarterback rating was 1.7 as he was 6 of 12 for 56 yards and the 2 picks. What about the long term for Howell? When, again, Rivera said pretty much throughout the season that this was all about developing the quarterback. And he even got, chesty in September when he said, hey, if they fire me and they got 40 of the 53 guys that I drafted on the roster and Sam Howell is your quarterback, well, send me my ring and I'm vindicated. So he said that. And now we're talking about the future of Sam Howell, which looks darker than it's looked in a long, long time, maybe even since he was drafted. And this was this was Rivera on the Howell future.
No, it doesn't, and he's got a very good body of work. I mean, things have gone relatively well early in the season and into the middle, but he had some. It's been tough the last couple of weeks. Last few weeks have been tough on him, and he's taken a lot of snaps. The length of the season, obviously, he's probably wearing on him, as well as the number of plays he's had and the number of hits he's had to absorb. So, these are things, and like I said, these are points that are all, for discussion.
Yeah, but that was your system. That was the Eric Bieniemy system, who dropped them back more than any quarterback in the league this year, the 60 sacks, which are the most in the league, and the style of offense that they've run has led to that. So, sure, a guy who again, we've played now, 15 games, right? 15 games. College season isn't 15 games. Even if you make a bowl, it's 13 tops. So he's now played more football in a season than he's ever played before. The cumulative effect of a season that long, to go along with dropping him back more than anybody else, having him sacked more than anybody else, it would seem logical that the reason that he's worn down now is because of that. Yet, Rivera says
it's not as much as that, as much as just the results of what's gone on. I mean, this has been hard. This hasn't been simple. We haven't played as well as we would have liked to. We thought we could have played better. But, like I said, really right around Dallas is really been a real tough stretch, especially based on who we've played.
Yeah, well, Dallas pretty much took any possible air out of the sails on that Thanksgiving game where they hung 45 points on him. And then the Miami game, which followed after the 10-day break, because of the Thanksgiving game, where they gave up 45 again. And Howell wasn't exactly benched there. They put in Brissett at the end of the game to hand off and run out the clock. But that was really the beginning of the end. And I felt like that season, this season, any shred of hope for playoffs died with the Dallas game. That ended the season. And as I say, been saying this, they're going to probably lengthen the season out to 18 games. When you got to drag around this carcass of a season, which they've been doing since Thanksgiving, that's over a month now. They've been dragging this thing around since the 23rd of November, and today is the 27th of December, over a month, and you still got another 2 games to go. This is what you're up against, and this is why not just this team but other teams around the league are facing the same thing. And the speculation about Rivera began even before the season. As soon as you had new ownership, you pretty much knew the clock was ticking, and barring a miraculous season where Sam Howell developed into a Pro Bowl quarterback and this team won 10 games and even won a playoff game, there was no chance he was going to stay. And so now we've got this thing going on where we ask Ron Rivera about the future. Heck, the future for him is either going to be on another coaching staff next year or sitting on the beach counting his money. There's no Rivera next year, and there's no Sam Howell playing for Rivera next year. The only intriguing part of the relationship with Eric Bieniemy, which both Bieniemy has been effusive in his praise of Howell and vice versa, whoever takes over, does he want that to continue? Because, again, Bieniemy has a contract for next year. The other coaches do not. Ron Rivera's got 1 year left. That's going to be severance. And if you want to keep Eric Bieniemy on the staff and he doesn't get a head coaching job, they can do that. He's got a contract to work for this team. Now, there may be language in there which says it's tied to Ron Rivera. I'm not sure. but I would believe that it was a contract that said that he is under contract to this team for 2 years. They can choose to have him work next year, fire him and pay him, or if he does have an opportunity to become a head coach, he would be able to go. And I think also at this point, just doesn't feel this way, that Bieniemy would come back as the head coach. Maybe whoever takes over might feel that way. But I think everything that's going to be out next year is going to have a fresh new smell to it. Everything will be a lot different. Speaking of changes or not changes, you've got Antonio Pierce, the former Redskins linebacker, made the team as an undrafted free agent. They didn't handle the salary cap very well in Joe Gibbs' first year, and he was allowed to walk to the New York Giants, where he helped them to win a Super Bowl. He was on the staff with the Oakland Raiders, the team he grew up rooting for, and when Josh McDaniels was fired, he took over and has done well. He's 4-3 in the 7 games that he's coached, including a win over the defending champion Chiefs on their field on Monday. And Pierce, let's play this, and then I'll tell you what he said in follow-up. But this was after the game on Sunday when he talked to Tracy Wolfson of CBS after an emotional victory over the Chiefs on their field.
Merry Christmas. What a great Christmas present this was for you. And you told us coming into this game, enough is enough. How were you guys, your defense, able to come here on the road and win this one today?
Hell of a job by those guys. Our staff, Patrick Graham. It's tough.
I know the emotions. I can see it right now in your face. I can tell in your voice. Describe those emotions and what it means to you.
Yeah, this is what we wanted. We said enough is enough. Guys came. We said we had to squeeze. It was going to take all 60 minutes. It did. Hell of a job by our offense to finish it.
You grew up a Raiders fan. I know how bad you want the permanent job for the Las Vegas Raiders. What do you think you showed today?
I think our team showed that, we can go play on the road and do a hell of a job. Defense, offense is a team effort. Hell of a job by us. My spot will take care of itself.
Yeah, he did not make a big push for that. And he was asked yesterday at his news conference how he plans to prove to Mark Davis, the owner, he's the right person for the job. He said the proof has been delivered on the field. Quote, "My resume is on the grass. I can put up a fancy presentation. I can put up my resume, but the best thing that happened for me was the opportunity. Hopefully, Mark Davis sees improvement and growth within our team. He sees the style of play he wants from the Raiders. He sees a fan base that's behind us." And that quote, "My resume is on the grass," is good, and it kind of reminds me of Steve Spurrier. After Spurrier's 2-year run here didn't work out, and he resigned from the golf course after the 2003 season, he spent a year out of football. He was just, looking at the landscape, looking where he was going to go next. He knew he was going to go back to college. And reports are that he had an interview at Florida where he had won a national championship, where he had incredible success as a coach. And they had an opening, and the new athletic director talked to him and asked for a resume, and Spurrier supposedly said, "Check the trophy case down the hall." He wound up at South Carolina, didn't win a championship there, but did very well, and I think during that time, Florida went through a couple of coaches. It looks like Pierce will get the job, but you never know. This has happened before, where Mark Davis has fired a coach. Rich Bisaccia took over, did a good job, and he still went with Josh McDaniels, who was the fair-haired boy, having been with Bill Belichick, who now isn't the same Bill Belichick as we remember, and also could be on the open market. And wouldn't that be something if Antonio Pierce doesn't get the job and Bill Belichick does? Interesting. One other leftover from this Chiefs loss, and, maybe there's nothing to this. Andy Reid, the coach of the Chiefs, has not talked about it in any way that it's a negative. But this whole Taylor Swift thing, it ain't good. Ever since Taylor Swift has been showing up for games, hasn't been working out too well for the Kansas City Chiefs. They've lost 5 of their last 8, and there she was on Monday, arriving with Santa Claus. It's football coaches hate distractions. You can't really say anything about it. It's a star player. Travis Kelce dating her, but in the 8 games, they've lost 5 of the 8. with Taylor a regular in the press box with Mom, or in the luxury box with Mom. In those games, Travis Kelce has recorded just 42 catches for 443 yards and 1 touchdown. Those are not the numbers that he's put up over the years. In his first 6 games, he got 48 receptions for 525 yards and 4 touchdowns. So in 6 games, he had more receptions, more yards, and more touchdowns than he's had in the past 8. Travis Kelce should retire, said Clay Travis, putting it on X. He's been worthless the last 7 or 8 weeks. The double worthless Pfizer shots may have caught up with him. Yeah, he's a anti-vaxxer. He says either that or Taylor Swift is the Chiefs' Yoko Ono, maybe both. And, that's always an interesting comparison, because Yoko Ono supposedly broke up the Beatles, that she told John, you got to go out on your own and all that. I don't know if that's so, but she's always gotten the blame for that. If this is not a great season for the Chiefs, if they flame out in the playoffs early and don't make a run at getting back at the Super Bowl, will Taylor Swift get the blame for that? I don't think it's that, but again, if this were a Joe Gibbs team, he wouldn't like this. He would be taking his star tight end aside and saying, no, we can't have this. I don't think Bill Belichick would put up with this. I don't. I can't see some of the great coaches of the past like Bill Walsh doing this. I can see Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll seems to embrace this kind of thing. He likes to keep things light. Maybe it might work for him. Trying to think of some of the others. If you want to go old school, Vince Lombardi wouldn't have allowed this with the Green Bay Packers, or his 1 year with the Redskins. George Allen would have hated this. Oh, my God, especially an offensive player. Oh, my. Oh, no. We can't have this. We can't have a pop star taking away attention and everybody's fun. No, get her up. But Andy Reid's kind of in a tough position here. One of your best players is doing this, and look, the Chiefs are falling victim to what a lot of championships fall victim to. It's tough to stay focused. It's tough to keep your eye on the prize when you now got greater distractions because of the success that you had. We saw this with the Chicago Bears, a team that I thought was going to win 4 or 5 championships the way they played in 1985. And they got eliminated from the playoffs the next 2 years by the Redskins, and it all fell apart. So it can happen, and maybe that's happening with the Chiefs. But, in the meantime, it's not so bad for Kelce. He's making a ton of money on those commercials, State Farm commercials that he does with Mahomes. And he is dating a woman who makes a hell of a lot more money than he does and is one of the most famous people in the world right now. So, there's good and there's bad with that. All right, coming up, got a couple of Christmas stories, leftover Christmas stories to get to and more. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Got Tony coming up at 11. I'm keeping an eye on Twitter for the announcement from Ron Rivera on the starting quarterback. I would assume it's going to be Jacoby Brissett, but he's dragged this out. He said after the game on Sunday that he would have his announcement early in the week. He usually talks on Monday. Monday was Christmas, so he talked yesterday. He said, I need another day. Need to talk it over with Eric Bieniemy. So the news conference, which was supposed to be at 2 o'clock this afternoon, has been moved up to 10:45, so we're just a couple of minutes away from that. And when I see something on Twitter, I will pass along what the decision is. But again, I believe it's going to be Brissett, who would become, get this, the 9th starting quarterback just since 2020. So that's less than 4 seasons. Less than 4 seasons, a 9th different starting quarterback. Nikki Jabala put up the numbers here. Taylor Heineke, 24 starts since then. His winning percentage, 52%, so he won more than he lost. And his quarterback rating was the best of all the quarterbacks, except for one. Dwayne Haskins, Kyle Allen's rating was very good. I'll get to that. But 86.5, solid quarterback rating. Sam Howell, 16 starts, 0.331, so he's run only a third of his games. Carson Wentz, next, 7 starts. Number 3 quarterback, 7 starts. Alex Smith, 6 starts. He had a win percentage as well. He won, actually, 83% of his starts he won. Wow. Dwayne Haskins had 6 starts, won one of them, I guess. Kyle Allen, 4 starts. Garrett Gilbert, remember Garrett Gilbert? He came in not last year, but 2 years ago when Heineke had COVID and played. Might have been a Thursday night game. And he wasn't good, and we've never heard from him again. And then Ryan Fitzpatrick, who took 16 snaps and threw for a total of 13 yards in his one start as a Commander. So there's the ugly numbers, and it looks like number 9 is going to be Jacoby Brissett as we wait for the announcement from Ron Rivera, and as soon as we get it, we will pass it along. Meantime, a couple of leftover stories from Christmas, and this got a lot of attention. It's really kind of a cute story. You have to consider that the kid who did it was 3 years old, so keep that in mind. But this happened on Christmas morning, early Christmas morning, 3 a.m. Kate and Scott Rinkin were awakened by their 3-year-old son, who had a loud and terrifying request for the gift that he had just unexpectedly unwrapped. He needed scissors. He wanted to open up his Spider-Man web shooters, so he needed scissors to cut them free. That's when we thought, uh-oh, there's something wrong. They went downstairs. They live in North Carolina, and in fact, the young child was so excited about what Santa Claus had brought him that he opened all of his family gifts. Well, the kid couldn't read. He couldn't read a card, and his 2 brothers, his 2 siblings, they had not woken up with all the commotion. And so the dad, Scott, wrote on Twitter, "Y'all, my 3-year-old came down at 3 a.m. and unwrapped everyone's," in capital letters, presents. The photo posted to social media has been viewed more than 6 million times as of yesterday morning. It shows the destruction under the Christmas tree. So they had to go into damage control. The wife, Katie, rewrapped enough gifts in time and were able to get them back under the tree in time for the other kids to wake up. They have not named the child, who is only referred to as T. He had asked Santa for Spider-Man web shooters and a Sonic Lego set, so that when Christmas finally came, he wanted to search for him. The boy told his family that he came downstairs to open up all the presents, so no one was confused, that they all knew what they had gotten. Wow, this is some kid. Finally, 6 a.m., everybody's awake, and so the parents hadn't slept. And the 6-year-old didn't realize that anything was wrong, except that Santa got the names wrong on a couple of gifts. I guess she couldn't wrap them as efficiently as she wanted to. The parents later talked to the 3-year-old about how he feels when he opens a present. They also emphasized that they wanted other people to have that same choice and feeling on Christmas morning. The boy agreed that he wanted other people to experience what he had felt when he tore apart all the gifts, and repeated that he had only been trying to help, the family said. Isn't that nice? I mean, people get mad about that. I admire the kid, and they didn't have Leave It to Beaver. He wasn't 3 years old when he was on the show, but he used to do kind of precocious things, and there'd be a lecture from Ward Cleaver about that, and oh, Beaver, that's not what you're supposed to do. I imagine that there'll be some type of little. Well, I guess not. I guess that there really wouldn't be any kind of discipline for a 3-year-old. I think it's more like a life lesson, but the parents will have a story to tell. And with social media nowadays, those kind of things, go viral, and people look at that and, isn't he cute? Oh, isn't he a little monster doing that? Coming down and asking for scissors? Really? He's doing that? That's really something. Saw this the other day. This is cute, and well, not cute actually. It's kind of indicative of our times, and it was in the style section. Was it yesterday? Yeah, and it's a story that's written by Karen Heller, and the headline is "Fun is Dead. It's become exhausting, scheduled, hyped, forced, and performative." And I can relate to a number of these things. I've had a daughter who got married a couple of years ago. My son is going to get married in November, of next year. I'm a grandfather now. I've been through the various activities that go along with it, all the ceremonies. And she writes, weddings have morphed into multi-stage stress extravaganzas while doubling as express paths to insolvency. Destination proposals for the whole family, destination bachelorette and bachelor blowouts, destination weddings in remote barns with limited lodging, something called a buddy moon, bring the gang, and planners to help facilitate the same custom cocktailness of it all. That's an interesting way of putting it. When weddings involve this much travel, pedicabs, custom T-shirts, and porta potties, they become many things, but fun is not one of them. What could be a greater cause for joy or more natural than having a baby? Apparently not much these days. Impending parenthood is overthought and overamped, incorporating more savings-draining events that didn't exist a few decades ago. Baby moons and lethal fire-inducing gender reveal gatherings and baby showers so over the top as to shame weddings. Retirements must become purposeful, also occasions for acute identity crisis. You need to have a plan, a mission, a coach, a packed, color-coded grid of daily activities in a culture where our jobs and our identities are worth tied to employment. Vacations are overscheduled with too many activities. FOMO, meaning fear of missing out, on steroids, a paradox of choice-inducing decision fatigue, so much so that people return home exhausted and in need of another one. Yeah, and then they quote this woman, Elisa Alvarez, a social media marketing manager. I feel like I should be having more fun than I'm actually having. She's 27 years old, mind you, 27 years old. Because there is now a coach for everything, this woman, Alvarez, hired a party coach, Evan Cudworth, taking his $497 course this fall on how to pursue intentional fun. Cudworth meets with students biweekly, assigns podcasts, asks them to journal, and teaches them how to regulate their impulses and explore new outlets for fun. Blame it on the American culture that values work, productive power, wealth, status, and more work over leisure. Italians celebrate dolce di something, the sweetness of doing nothing. Americans reward the sweat of doing everything as soon as possible. Blame it on 2004 and the induction of FOMO, the introduction of FOMO, our dread of missing out, broadcast through multiple social media spigots, allowing us to follow, stalk prettier, richer people having oodles of fun in fabulous places while doing irreparable damage to our free time, self-esteem, and ability to experience joy. Todd Davis, 66, here's a guy my age, Scottsdale, Arizona, says, I don't think having fun is a matter of finding time. I think it's an emotion. Davis is a corporate fun coach. Well, of course he is. And author of Fun at Work, which sounds like an oxymoron, but once upon a time, workplaces could be fun as opposed to offices that are designed to appear fun, look for wood accents, kind bars, things like that, so that people will spend every waking hour there. Back in the day, coworkers were friends, sometimes more. After hours, they gathered for drinks, played softball. Today, because of email, Slack, and remote work, offices are half empty and far quieter than libraries. So, yeah, I mean, some really good points there. And, you know, I see it with my kids and how much money they spend on these bachelor parties and bachelorette parties, and you have to go somewhere to do it, and some has to be bigger than others, and this, that, and the other. I mean, come on. We are exhausting ourselves trying to do it, I guess, better and faster and bigger than people of the past. And you know, my kids make fun of me. My bachelor party was, you know, some guys getting together. We had a few beers, and that was kind of it. But nowadays you have to do all these things, and you have to have destination proposals. I mean, both of my kids had photographers when proposals were made. My daughter didn't propose, but her husband proposed to her, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a little much, you know. Just relax, you know, just all this planning, all these things. It's just an exhausting way of doing things. And I don't know. It just is a little too much. Still waiting. I'm checking through Twitter here as I yak away and have not seen anything yet. I'm anticipating it's going to be Jacoby Brissett, but the news conference, which I guess was supposed to start at 10:45, has been delayed a few minutes. Maybe there's a last minute change of heart on the part of Ron Rivera. I don't know. But, again, I don't think it's going to make a great deal of difference who plays, but I think that the only decision that Ron Rivera can make after benching Sam Howell the last 2 weeks is to start Jacoby Brissett on Sunday. We shall see. Anyway, Tony's got a show today, and he's got a show on Friday. I want you to enjoy the rest of the day. And wait a minute, one more check here as I vamp for just a second. Nope, still nothing yet from Ron Rivera, but we'll pass it along as soon as we can. Tony is coming up next, and I will see you back here tomorrow at 9 a.m.